Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's gathering of joy concerning Meditate NYC 2022. My name is James Lynch, and I'm the current president of the Buddhist Council of New York, a Risho Kosakai member and practitioner. On behalf of the Buddhist Council of New York, I welcome all of you with a heart of compassion, joy, and hope to Meditate NYC 2022 with a theme of End Racism, Build Peace. And it sort of follows on the other idea that we had a year ago of raising the lotus, no mud, no lotus. And again, I want to thank all the speakers who are participating today for their willingness to share their compassion and love of the Dharma with all of us in these extremely difficult times. I also want to thank all the people, the tireless workers on the council who work behind the scenes on the council to make this day a success, despite surgeries, tooth extractions, root canals, and crazy schedules. You have all gone above and beyond, making this Meditate 2022 day a special day. Indeed, it was a time of significant change for me. As we came to prepare for this day, I became extremely ill. And then in the last week, I suffered the loss of a close relative. So I want to take a moment to thank the organizing team specifically for making sure that we're always on the right path. Reverend Guo Yuan, for her follow-up, her kindness and leadership. Sylvie Sun, for willingness to offer outstanding insight behind the scenes, like a rudder on a ship. Bhante Kondanna, for his wisdom and compassion in making sure that we are always making the right decisions going forward. And of course, Venerable TK Nakagaki, who even though he's in Japan, has shown constant diligence and ongoing efforts at making this event go off smoothly, and he is ever and eternally appreciated. And so this year's Meditate 22 event starts off with thanks, and also thanks and gratitude to all of you for making it through this challenging time. And it's with you in mind that this year's theme was in fact formulated. Indeed, the theme of End Racism, Build Peace, which is a UN theme, I truly believe builds on last year's Meditate NYC, New York City sub-theme, as provided by the late Thich Nhat Hanh, of No Mud, No Lotus, which in fact has deep significance. Last year for this event, I mentioned that there were three mysterious powers of the lotus, which refer directly to us sharing the Dharma during these challenging times. First, the lotus flower represents enlightenment. For regardless of the dirty environment and muddy water in which it is rooted, the lotus flower skillfully rises above it all to bloom in beauty, facing the sun like all of you, and continues to rise. And hence, even in the muddy waters of racism, through our collective will of loving kindness and compassion, we can truly build peace. Second, the lotus flower also represents new beginnings. The flower emerges in the morning, only faithfully closes up at night, and then disappears back into the water. And yet, in the morning, a new blossom reemerges and continues the cycle. You, like the lotus cycle, are emerging to face a new day. So with our efforts here today, we are making a new beginning to end racism and to build a more peaceful society, mindful that it isn't a one-day activity or even a year activity, but a lifetime activity that brings our minds of joy and equality for the benefit of all. And finally, for today, thirdly, the lotus flower sheds its seeds and blossoms at the same time. For Buddhists, it represents the principle of cause and effect, wherein every action or thought is believed to cause an effect that can be experienced either now or in the future, and reveals the power of every encounter that we have in our lives. Nothing is meaningless, and that we are all part of the great life force of the universe, and that you, by your great compassion for others, are changing our world for the better. And for this year, I added the idea that we must be courageous in the sight of the challenges we face to end racism and build peace, knowing that no outcome occurs in isolation, that only when we act kindly and compassionately, lovingly determined together can we end racism. So in Meditate 2022 is presented with these key elements of the lotus in mind, that regardless of the challenge that confront us, we shall rise above them with beauty and joy. And two, that this day today, this precious moment, represents a new beginning, and that we through our actions determine our future. And three, that the wonderful causes that we create today immediately begin to change our world into the land of tranquil light. In preparation for today, I've been praying and asking the Buddha that we might leave here today by continuing to be more than mere observers, to ongoing occurrences in our world, that we use our bodies and minds to act for a world devoid of racism, and that one firmly committed to universal peace, that we remember that our worldly mud of desire and confusion can be turned around and transformed by our hands, our feet, our tongue, and our minds. I know that based upon the Buddha Dharma that we're here for a reason and that we do make a difference. And I also believe that we in the Buddhist community and the Buddhist Council of New York must take a far more prominent role in the city life going forward. Indeed, everywhere I go, people in New York City and the larger metropolitan community are asking, no, they're begging for you. And they want your kindness, your insight, your skill in healing our world in order to move forward. Again, let me say our communities need your beautiful presence. And as we help others, we also remember that no Dharma center, no temple or Buddhist meditation hall should ever suffer alone. The council is here to help you. Please never forget that. We are here for you. Lastly, as in my remarks, as the Buddha commands, let us make ourselves the light, make the Dharma our light, or the truth. And listening to the Buddha's sacred directive, let that light be a hopeful light for others. Let us pray that the Buddha, whom we devoutly revere, the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and countless heavenly beings who are omnipresent in the 10 directions will watch over our peaceful steps today in whatever way they can, and extend their hands of compassion and guidance and beckon forth peace in our local area, in our country, and yes, in our world. We also pray that the world of all living beings will find peace. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, James A. Lynch, President of the Buddhist Council of New York. I offer these words of hope to you. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everybody, for willing to listen. We're now going to start off with a Dharma presentation from Reverend Chimyo Atkinson. And here we have her bio. Reverend Atkinson was ordained by Reverend Chimyo Munich in 2007 and received Dharma transmission in 2015. She received her monastic training at Great Tree and completed Shotoshu International Training Periods Ango in Japan in 2010 and 2011. She completed additional training periods at the Achi Senmon Nisodo in Nagoya in 2012, at Runmonji Monastery in Iowa in 2014. Chimyo served as head practice at Great Tree Zen Women's Temple and volunteered with the Sangha at Avery Mitchell Correctional Institute until 2020. Reverend Atkinson, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to again meet with you. I've been trying for, I think, 2 years to meet you all in person, and I hope that will soon happen. It's very funny. Whenever I'm asked to speak on racism, I always feel like I don't know what to say. In part, it seems that I'm being asked to talk about someone's fantasy, the idea of race, the idea of superiority and inferiority is a bit of a contradiction as I understand Buddhist thought. No separation, no self, no no discrimination. I'm sorry, I lost my word. Is part of what I've learned in this practice that I've been doing for a while. And I'm not going to say that I truly understand all of that, or that it's all sunken in and that I am free of all the delusion and the fantasy that I have created around the self. And at the same time, it's very hard sometimes when we are all suffering because of this mass delusion of racism. We all experience it in some way. Sometimes hard to find the the feeling, the connection with those who practice in this hate mode. So sometimes I don't really know what to say. But all, as we know, all we can go do is go back to the words and the deeds of the Buddha. The Buddha was a prince who knew all about privilege, who lived a life, most of his young life, his formative life, in a place where the idea of his superiority was a given, that every being on this earth was meant to serve him for no good reason, or whatever reasons were given or constructed. He lived that fantasy too. But at some point, he walked away from that, and he chopped off his hair and walked into the forest, walked into the world, into the reality of the stings and nettles and the branches poking, and the animals hunting, and danger and fear, and came out of that forest. And he said to the cowherd and the pariah, he spoke to the prostitute and the princess, he connected with the criminal and the enemy, and he said, "Come." And all barriers fell away. It is my faith that that is possible for all of us. I'm only speak from I, because I only know my own experience that deeply. But I walk into the forest every day, and I can pretend or fantasize that I am in this box of privilege that says that I am worthy of this or that, and these people are not. I know there are people out there who have their own little boxes that exclude me. But the practice that I do every day and try to maintain every day, the faith that I try to maintain every day, is that the Buddha's words and the practice that he left for me and all beings will free us all from that. And that I have to continue to work at deconstructing that box that separates me from all other beings and causes me, well, it doesn't cause me, I cause me to create the suffering in the world that manifests as racism or poverty or some suffering, with whatever label or ism you want to connect to it. That practice is the Eightfold Path that is pointing me to the reality and breaking that fantasy. The reality that says that I have to look upon things without the cloud of my ego and my fear, and actually see who is standing right before me. In my mind, it takes a great effort for someone to stand in front of another being, look into their eyes, and condemn them to slavery, condemn them to poverty, to judge and say that they are not worthy of the life that and the breath that I myself have. It's like sitting on a real long bench and, you're sitting in the middle of the bench and not moving over an inch, although there's all this space around me. I deny a seat. I deny space. I deny rest and comfort. I deny existence for another being because why? My fear that somehow I lose when I give. I lose when someone else gains. The inconsequential differences that my senses pick up and interpret have nothing to do with any of that. And yet I would use them to create my box and to create this pain that is the world for no good reason. It's hard to face that within oneself. It's difficult to watch others also in that delusion, in that pain, causing, again, more and more pain in the world, and try not to calcify into that delusive state. But reality is what the Buddhist practice that I follow keeps showing me, and I have to keep looking at it. They say there's the relative world that we have to deal with. Dogen expresses it as the relative world and the universal, or forgive my lack of words because I can't even read my own writing in this light. The relative world requires that I act, and the Eightfold Path tells me to act with the right intention and the right consciousness that I hope that I get from my practice. And that action takes place in the voting booth. It takes place in the marketplace. It takes place on the streets of Manhattan and the Bronx. It happens when I encounter someone who is hungry. And it happens when I encounter someone who is angry and fearful and blaming the world, blaming me sometimes for whatever reason they can find to blame me. And I have to respond to all that with the equanimity and the compassion that my practice and the Buddhist teachings that I've received point me to. And I hope that I can. It is hope that however I respond to the world through generosity, giving of treasure or time, through speaking out against injustices and pain, in trying to alleviate in some way the fear that creates and feeds on itself to continue to create the madness, the fear, the suffering again and again. So that is where I am with that. And it almost has nothing to do, and I'm not, and please do not mistake me. I am not saying that racism does not exist in this world. I'm not saying that poverty is a given in this world. It is not. It is what I am responsible for making, and everyone in the world is responsible for making when we do not follow the path. So I don't know whether I feel encouraged, because the Eightfold Path gives me that way to work with this, and helps me to find ways in this relative world to respond in an appropriate manner, in a dharmic manner. And I hope that through the efforts that I make and that all of you are making in spreading the Dharma, that will happen. And I also have to believe and have faith that it is happening, even though I turn on the news and there are more tears every day. But there's a joy in that we have the Buddha's words, the Buddha's teaching to help us through this, to transcend it, to cut through it, and hopefully move others into a more dharmic life. So thank you very much for listening.
Venerable Yuan is the abbot of the Dharma Drum Retreat Center in Pine Bush, New York, a senior monk, disciple of the well-known Chan monastery Shang Yen. He studied under his teacher for over 20 years and assisted his teacher in many Chan retreats overseas. He currently leads Chan retreats in many parts of the world, including Europe, America, Mexico, Taiwan, and other parts of Asia. Venerable Yuan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Buddhist Council of New York. And thank you, Venerable Chimyo Atkinson, for a moving talk. I really enjoyed very much. And of course, thank everyone for being here with us. I've been away for a while, since 2005. And before that, I was much connected with Buddhist Council of New York. And of course, we attend parade and walking, things like that, with the Buddhist Council of New York. And last year, we connected again with Buddhist Council of New York. It was one online talk last year. At this time, again, we meet together. And of course, traveling around, we see more or less a very similar problem that we encounter everyday life and everywhere. Seems like the suffering, it just keep on going, not only with the world disaster, but also with the world going on. And inequality in everywhere that you see, here and there, some more intense, the other one is milder, but they're there. And not only that, that we also have different problems. because of the so-called ignorance that we have. So it's lucky enough that we are able to encounter the teaching of the Buddhas. And we are also blessed enough to know that we all have this potential of becoming a Buddha, which is the enlightened one, the one that is completion with compassion and wisdom. And that's why we follow the path. And we try to go for that directions. And of course, the teachings, the concepts, as well as the practice. And in one of the practice, there are many ways of doing meditations. And why do we do meditation? There must be benefit to human beings. And they could clear up our mind, enhance our physical body. And with the teaching from the Buddha, that it becomes a guidance for us to do it correctly, do it appropriately. That's what happened. And of course, in order to settle our mind, then we need to do meditation. Now, meditation comes into many forms. It could be that using a sound. It could be using a light. It could be using an image, or just reciting a mantra or reciting the Buddha's name. And for many traditions, we also use the method of the breath. All these methods that I mentioned, and of course also includes the so-called exercise that we could make use of in our everyday life, and to clear up our mind, to settle ourselves, to relax our body as well as relax our mind. So it becomes a necessary that we do practice that every day until the so-called Buddha nature that is already there, but we didn't realize it. One day we'll realize the Buddha nature that we have. And we need to walk, starting out from some kind of practice. And that is the meditation practice. Now, for the today, I'd like to share with you a very simple one, just to begin with, is how to relax your body, and then gradually come into the method of the breath. Right. So first of all, we join our palms and then place our awareness to the tips of our middle fingers. This is just to settle ourselves. It's about 1 minute. So put your hands to your knees, and followed by it is the movements of the head. Again, this is to clear up our mind as well as to relax ourselves. When we do that, then it suggests that we do it very slowly and we are wholeheartedly follow the movements of the head. So we tilt the head to the left and feel the gradual changing of the head to the left, left. The mind is there with the movement, moment by moment. And then feel the stretching of the muscles of your neck. And then tilt to the right. Moment by moment, feeling the changing of your neck and your head. And then feel the stretching when you almost like to the end of the stretching. And then to the left, again, moment by moment. As we are doing that, it's very easy for us to settle down, to relax, and to settle. To the right, just to be there with the movement of your head. To the left, to the right, once you're more settled, you feel settled and relaxed, and naturally, a smile will come to you, so natural. Return your head to the center. Now turn your head to the left. And your eyes will look all the way to the back as much as possible. And feel the stretching of the muscles of your neck. Turn right. Turn left. Turn right. If you drift away from that moment by moment, just bring yourself back to the movements of your body, of your head. Return your head to the center. Then move your head down. Have your chin closer and closer to the chest if possible. And feel the stretching right there to the muscles of your neck. Backward. Raise your chin up as high as possible. Forward. Backward. Return your head to the center. Now combine these three together, making circles to the head. To your left. To the front. Gently, slowly, smoothly, relaxingly, calmly. Again. And again. Then reverse direction. One more time. And again. And return your head to the center. Now, because of the time limited, I will end here, but I hope that through this slow movements of the head exercise, you'll be settled. You will have a smile. Your mind is calm. Your body is relaxed. Thank you.
Guo Yuan, thank you so much. I feel very relaxed. It had a tremendous impact on me. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you. Next, we have, thank you, Guo Yuan, Lama Zangmo, teacher in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. They completed 3 consecutive 3-year retreats at Kayu and Ningama lineages at Paupong, Tibetan Kuling in upstate New York, and now reside there as a member of the monastic community. They feel grateful to Count Tai Situ Rinpoche, Yungay Minmar Rinpoche, and Tusne Rinpoche among their guiding teachers.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Wonderful to be here together today in community, practicing the teachings of the Buddha. I really appreciate this opportunity just to find out what's going on in the city and like all the different ways people are helping beings through the teachings, and that, you know, having the Dharma as the support for practice to really do difficult work is very inspiring for me to hear about. So I've been asked to present a little something from the Tibetan tradition. And my idea was to frame it in terms of the view, meditation, and conduct, which is a very traditional framework. And so the view is especially related to like our mental and our intellectual capacity. And I think this picks up right where Reverend Atkinson left off, talking about the ultimate and the relative truths that we hold in our tradition. And in particular, the Tibetan tradition, I think all Mahayana traditions talk about Buddha nature or basic goodness. And so ultimately, the ultimate truth is that we all have this nature, we all have the same nature as each other, and we all have the same nature as the Buddha. And it's basically good. And so if we can look at the world like with this, what we call pure perception or sacred outlook, in my perspective, like my experience is that like trying to look at the world this way has really given me the ability to give the benefit of the doubt. Like when I'm interacting with people, when I first meet people, just having like a little bit of trust in that nature. And it makes me be able to be more open with folks. And then we have the relative truth, that world that we all kind of have this common perception together of where we live. And then we have, you know, our individual perception within that. And many of my lamas break down the relative into 2 parts, the healthy relative and the distorted relative. So I think this is really where the topic of racism comes in, because we can have, you know, this sort of like optimistic, I very much have like this optimistic style for myself where I look at folks and I really want to have that benefit of the doubt and that trust. And we have so many systems and so many individuals who aren't treating each other that way. And so like, how does that work in the Buddhist framework? So the healthy relative is defined as understanding that we're interdependent and that we're multiple, or we have like many different like pieces to us, parts to us, and that we're impermanent and the world is impermanent. And conversely, when we distort that, then we have a sense of independence, that we're each like singular individuals, and that's where this like strong sense of I and me versus others or you comes in and really can just create such a great divide, as we all know. And then permanence, thinking that there's no chance for change, that there's like no kind of hope and despair can come in there. So the first step, as my teacher Sotni Rinpoche says, is we can't reach the ultimate without the relative. Like we have to rely on working from moving from this distorted relative to a healthy relative in order to progress to really having this like ultimate Buddha nature be able to shine forth, and for that, not just as individuals, but as collective society, and for like the world, the planet is like so much a part of what we're talking about here and how we're destroying, Mother Earth. So when we talk about trying to really understand our interdependence and our multiplicity, like I think this is where intersectional identity and social location comes in. I have to say this is like something that I'm really conscientious of. Just to name a few of my intersectional identities, I'm a white person, living full time in Buddhist robes, which are from another continent altogether. And, that heritage has been preserved for 1,000 years. And then 2,500 years in total, from cultures and humans that, have a very different background than me. So what does that mean for me? Like operating in the world, like I have to kind of be conscientious about that from my perspective. And then within American and international kind of colonial politics, then this multiplicity comes in of, European nations colonizing this country and other countries throughout the world, and those being my ancestors. I have to like really acknowledge and recognize that. And then at the same time, I'm non-binary, I'm queer, from the Midwest, the Bible Belt. And so, I experienced different, going from privilege to kind of an underprivileged or marginalized identity in that particular arena is another thing that really affects me, and I think allows me to have a window into this compassion. I mean, I think that's really what brought me to the Dharma in a lot of ways, is the suffering experience that I did, a lot of it coming through like that kind of identity, that piece of my identity. So acknowledging, understanding like our interdependence, our community, so much about interdependence is Sangha, and regardless of all of these different things, like we are so important to each other, and how we act definitely matters to each other and how the world works. So I think that understanding that healthy relative can then lead us to really have space to have this pure perception, which is that we are all ultimately Buddha. And then I think and I feel like probably everybody here, I've talked to, my fellow presenters and have a sense in general from being in Buddhist community for 20 years that so many of us, acknowledge the different difficulties I just mentioned, homophobia, environmental issues, racism, all these things. And yet here we still are, our world still looks the way that it does. Sometimes even our Buddhist communities look this way. So that's where we go from the view to meditation, because sometimes I feel that it can be really hard, especially in the educated society many of us grew up in, to move from this intellectual level of understanding and seeing to really experiencing and feeling, suffering and loving, compassion and kindness, the wish for others to be happy, and then, compassion, the wish to end suffering. Like we need to be able to move and take that view into our own experience. And I feel like that's what meditation really has helped me with. And being able not just to see suffering and want to end suffering, to be like comfortable to be able to sit with our own suffering and to be able to sit with each other's suffering. And as others mentioned, as Mr. Yuan mentioned, to be able to settle ourselves. And if we can be settled in ourselves and be settled in community, both like comfortable community and community in which we may have a lot of differences we have to work through, then we can actually be able to listen to each other, to hear each other, to genuinely communicate with each other, and to be able to create systems that are beneficial, and to be able to create Sangha that's just beautiful. I think when that type of thing does happen, then it's like really rewarding and really wonderful. And so I want to offer a practice in that vein from the Tibetan tradition, which offers this opportunity to settle, and I wanted to frame it within the work of Resva Menakem's My Grandmother's Hands, which I'm sure many people have heard of and most have probably read. And I got the opportunity to read that book with another Buddhist Sangha based in Boulder, the Shambhala Boulder Center. And we read it very slowly. I listened to the audiobook, we practiced together. And I was really like amazed by how much in particular the practices of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition offer all the types of soothing and settling not all of them, but so many of the soothing and settling techniques that he recommended are already there. They're already a skillful means right in my tradition that I'm already practicing. I just had never framed it that way. And so, some of the things he mentioned are humming, buzzing, like slow rocking, which usually when we chant mantras, we are not necessarily still, but we kind of maybe do a little bit of this axis with our spine. And, oming, he specifically mentioned, which is the first letter of the mantra we'll say today. And then singing aloud, chanting, like these things is what we do all the time. And then in addition to the mantra recitation and the chanting, the Tibetan lineage particularly practice that we add. And so, and this is based in the pure perception, the Buddha nature. So the one we're going to do today is Chenrezig, in Tibetan, Kuan Yin, in Chinese, Canon, and Japanese. And so we have the Bodhisattva, as we say, of compassion, the deity of compassion. So this is an actual like representative of compassion. It is when we do the visualization, that's the compassion associated with our body. And then when we say the mantra, that's the compassion coming out with our speech. And then we'll do like a small visualization in the heart center of just white light radiating, and that's associated with the compassion in our mind. So we're actually like completely embodying with our body, speech, and mind this wish for suffering to end. And that's what Chenrezig actually is. We don't even say it's a representation. We just say Chenrezig is compassion. And we also, in our ultimate level, are also compassion. So we call this the skillful means of the Vajrayana. So at this point, I want to share my screen. So this is, I want to do all the parts. We have the chanting on the right, which is a 4-line praise or homage to this Bodhisattva of compassion. And then on the bottom right is the mantra. And then on the left is the picture. And so we have deities of all different colors, all different genders. Actually, this particular deity is male in the Tibetan form or masculine, but then female in Chinese and Japanese form. So even this deity can be multiple genders. And that's Amitabha, the Buddha Amitabha on the crown of his head. And so in this case, Chenrezig is white, which is associated with the karma or action of peacefulness. So this is the one that my lineage specifically recommends to be used freely and widely by all beings. And when I first started meditating in DC 20 years ago, this was the first practice that we did. And so we'll visualize ourselves in as simple or complicated of a version of the drawing on the left as you want to. The main points is that he has 4 hands, 1 head, and 2 legs. That's usually how we describe the deities. And then the color white, as I mentioned. And we also want to imagine each other and all beings as Chenrezig as well, because again, we all have this nature. And so in that way, we kind of equalize each other. So this compassion has the underlying quality of equanimity to it. And then the land that we're in becomes the pure land of Amitabha, Dewachen, or Sukhavati. So that will be our visualization, and we'll keep our posture. The main point, to keep it brief, is to have a straight spine, and then to whatever everyone else can do to support that straight spine. And we'll chant through the Tibetan, which is the second line that says like Jowo Chunji, within each one. I mean, part of my work and part of my lineage tradition, my specific monastery, is to really keep the Tibetan alive. There's, you know, thousands and millions of Tibetans on our planet right now. Today, it's a living language, and we want to like maintain that heritage and also the blessing, because so many great masters have chanted this language and, you know, attained real realization from doing so. So we'll chant the Tibetan through twice, and then we'll chant the English once, because it is also, you know, very important we know what we're saying. And then we'll chant the mantra. We'll sing it out loud a few cycles, and then, so that's the singing part, as Resma Menakin mentions, and then we'll kind of hum it to ourselves. It's almost like a whisper that we can just barely hear. And then I'll hit the gong, and we'll do what's called a mental recitation. So we'll maintain like an internal hearing of the mantra. We can think of it in our ear, we can think of it in our heart center. And that's sort of like similar to what the last meditation we did with moving the head as the support. Then we'll use that internal mantra recitation as the support. So then I'll just wrap up after that. So let me see. Would it be possible to get a time check? I think maybe we have like 7 or so minutes left. Is that right?
You're fine.
Okay, great. I just want to be respectful of the
Thank
time.
you.
Okay, so I'll lead as I just said. And, you know, hopefully the other thing Resma Menakin mentions is that in addition to settling ourselves, these sorts of practices really create a sense of belonging and community. So that's a little trickier over Zoom, especially when we have to turn the mics off for the, but we've been doing this for our monastery for almost 2 years now over Zoom, and people keeps coming back. So I think there's still a potential for us to make a connection this way. 조워 천지 마그 그도가 서산지지 울라전 둥지 천지 졸라지 천메실라 착살로 조워 천지 마그 그도가 서산지지 울라전 두제 천지 졸라지 천메실라 착살로 Immaculate Lord with white body, crowned by the perfect Buddha, with eyes of compassion you regard all beings. To you, Chenrezi, I bow down. Omani Deme Hung, 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 Omani Deme Hung. Omani Deme Hung, 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 Omani Deme Hung. Omani Deme Hung, 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 Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Mani padme hum, 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 mani. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani. Om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum. Okay. So thank you very much. I just wanted to offer, I hope that was beneficial for everyone, or at least, a taste, the taste of the Tibetan style. And so now that was the meditation. And I think in terms of conduct, like everyone here is probably, seems like doing so much wonderful work in terms of conducting and engaging in the world. And the idea here is that to whatever extent we were settled, to whatever extent we were able to look at ourselves and really like see ourselves as Buddha, and to see each other as Buddha, and to see the world as pure, that's like our potential. That's, sometimes we say it's the seed, and sometimes we say, it's the fruition, that we can already operate from that fruition now. When we're at that point with ourselves, there's self-care and everything that's also like really important. For me, this is a huge part of it. So if we can, like when we can be like settled and we can be in ourselves, then, I mean, for me, the interpersonal benefits have really been, I was just so shy before and I could never have done anything like this. And I felt like very sort of that I was always like looking at myself and thinking about myself when I was interacting. And I think some practice like this can really help me relax all of that internal dialogue and really just be with another person, and have a lot more internal space for being able to hear like where they're coming from, whether it's verbally said or interactionally said, non-verbally said. So, and then I think we can also make better decisions and be able to take more accounts, more perspectives into account, by having ourselves like a little bit more settled, and definitely, you know, be able to serve others from this perspective, have a better opportunity to serve others from this perspective. So that's the conduct portion. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, again, for all the work you all are doing and for having me.
Thank you so much, Lama Zangmo. That was wonderful, actually. Coming off of Venerable Yuan's presentation, it was a perfect segue. It made us feel very relaxed, I think. Next up, we have Bhikkhu Santi. He's a monk in the Bhikkhu ordained from the Thai forest tradition, a meditation-centered branch of the Theravada Buddhism. He cultivates a small I liberal practice of monasticism and approaches the Dharma from a naturalistic, secular viewpoint. Based in New York City, he writes and teaches on the intersections of early Buddhism, science, Western philosophy, and modernity, on renunciation and monasticism, on the conscious use of technology, and on other spiritual and practice-related themes. Santi means peace, and as a monastic name, it's encouragement to value and foster peace, which he aims to develop in concert with understanding its inseparable concomitant on the Buddhist path. Thank you so much, Bhikkhu Santi.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be with Buddhists from across the Buddhist world. Venerable Doyen shared with me that this group hasn't had so much of a representation of Theravada Buddhist communities. So I'm happy to be here to share something about my tradition. Unfortunately, I can only share just a little bit because Theravada is itself a very diverse, broad world of Buddhist practice and understanding. While we're in a kind of meditative frame, maybe I'll share a bit of the kind of practice that I was fortunate to be trained in the Thai forest tradition. The Buddhist monastic I most look to as my teacher is the Venerable Ajahn Chah, the Thai forest master. He offered the wonderful teaching that at bottom, there's only one way to meditate. That all of the techniques and all of the different approaches and practices ultimately lead the same way. And at bottom, all of the conditioning of the mind that they effect for us lead us towards the same kind of purification. One of the things when I first turned to the Dhamma in my own life that I loved so much about Buddhism was the idea that purity inhered not in the body, not in getting rid of some impure part of the body, not in gender, not in race, but in the mind. Purifying the mind in the Buddhist teaching is purifying it of the mental defilements. And as far as I know, this is the kind of central idea in all Buddhist traditions. And as Venerable Guo Yuan shared with us, when we meditate, we bring the mind to a relaxed, peaceful, collected purity. So let's meditate together in a few minutes, for a few minutes, in the style of Ajahn Chah. And after that, I'll share a few comments on today's theme. So please take a comfortable meditation position. You can use any of the traditional meditation objects, but I'll offer my comments on the breath. And if there's anything that is actually kind of agitating your mind or irritating your mind about how I'm leading the meditation, please, by all means, just for a few minutes, just do your own practice. But if you'd like to try this style of meditation, we can take our meditation position, the spine upright, nice and long. Maybe slightly tucking the chin, alert, upright, but not rigid, whether seated on the floor or in a chair. And take a nice deep breath. Let all the air out, relaxing the body. Maybe another breath or two like that, intentionally filling the lungs. Feeling the air coming out, releasing the shoulders, releasing any tension in the body. Maybe one more breath. And as you release the breath, letting go of any control of the breath, and simply letting the breath come to its natural rhythm, its natural pace. Feeling the condition of the body broadly, noticing sensations in the body wherever they're coming up. Gently turn your attention to where in the body you feel the movement of the breath. If you'd like to be really traditional with me here, we can go to the tip of the nose and notice the feeling of the air as it moves in and out of the nose. Fast or slow, it's okay, doesn't matter. Just noticing that sensation. It might be very clear, or it might be intermittent. There might even be blank spots. And that too is okay. And if the mind wanders, as at some point it will, just gently bring it back to the breath. When you notice that the mind has wandered, that's meditation in this understanding. Each time you come back to the breath, that's the beginning of a new cycle of meditation. We lift the mind back into the meditation. And like this, we stay with the breath simply noticing the sensation. It can be very fine, it can become very refined, or less so. We simply accept whatever level of awareness is available. And when we notice if the mind has wandered, we bring it back. And that's the training. So please share this very simple meditation with me for a few moments of silence. Where is the mind now? Is it wandering? Wandering in its own inner samsara? Or is it with the breath? It's calmly noticing. If it was wandering, can you be okay with that? And like this, we pursue meditation not as a development towards a fixed goal, but as an inquiry, a resting. And over time, a development of the capacity to dwell in the peaceful, settled mind. And as you begin to shift with me into a more active mode, I'm going to share a few reflections on our theme today. Please feel free to listen with your eyes closed. That's traditional, actually, in Theravada, when listening to reflections in the Dhamma, not required. That business of being able to sit with my eyes closed, not reacting, not judging, while I listened to a Dhamma talk was another thing that I really fell in love with when I first encountered the tradition that I'm trained in. So I wanted to offer a few thoughts on our theme, ending racism. It brought to mind for me the kind of classic, cliched understanding of the ancient debate or dispute, sometimes argument between the Theravada and the Mahayana. The ostensible, apparent conflict between working on oneself or helping others. of course, it's kind of a false dichotomy. I'm sure you've all reflected on it. But it bears reflecting on in particular, I think, in relation to racism. For myself, I'm Theravada. I'm one of the, I've chosen the path of starting with myself, again, ostensibly, because I don't really see it like that. Like Lama Zangmo, I noticed very soon after I began to practice that my mom seemed like a lot happier than when I was around than she usually did. I realized I was actually kind of helping her by calming my own mind. And similarly, in helping other people, of course, we lift ourselves up. Offering a meal to somebody on the street, what lifts the heart like that? I imagine you've all reflected on how this supposed split between the Theravada and the Mahayana, it's kind of a superficial split. Beneath that different starting point, there's a common place that we very quickly get to. But for me, I can still get quite tripped up. I can endlessly reflect on, try to address, extirpate my own racism, my own intolerance. As a white American, it's endless. And yet, if I don't look at it carefully, if I don't reflect on it, if I don't keep trying to cultivate a more wholesome mind, then my interactions with other people are going to be unconscious from that place of privilege that I grew up with. And yet I've got to interact with other people. I've got to do my part as well as I can. The two go hand in hand, of course. So in the Thai forest tradition, there's a lot of emphasis on cultivating mindfulness. That is the stabilizing mental factor. It's the simple knowing that allows a recognition of all of the factors that need to be brought forward, of how they can be balanced. Energy that's not mindful can become agitated or aggressive, however well intended. Calm that's not mindful can become quietist. It can become passive. Mindfulness is the quality we cultivate to bring forward the work that needs to be done, to see where we need to place our efforts. So I find a lot of value in this practice, working on myself in order to facilitate the work that I do in the world. Ultimately, the world in this understanding isn't a place. It's not the crowds of people. It's not the trees and the buildings. It's not even the wars and the injustice. It's the defilement of all of the minds that are driving the pain and suffering. And And it's in us. It's in each of us. It's in all of us. We can cultivate its antidote in ourselves, and we can cultivate it in one another through our peaceful, positive work in the world. And I'll offer those words for your reflection.
Thank you very much, Bhikkhu Santi. That was wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Very insightful. Let me just read Dr. Venerable Sobhita. He actually provided us with some words that he was providing to the United Nations. And what you're going to see also is that Reverend Doyen is going to put the link to his full text in the chat box, so you can click to that so you can see his entire remarks. And what I'm going to is read from his remarks, some of the key points. But let me give you his bio. Venerable Sobhita, a Buddhist monk from Myanmar, United Nations World and Peace Ambassador, founder and president of International Buddhist Education Center, as well as vice chancellor of the Kunala Buddhist University in Myanmar. His organization and monastery are located in Sangam region, where the most political conflicts and violence are happening in Myanmar. Currently, he provides shelter, food, and education for over thousands of refugees at International Buddhist Education Center headquarters in Sangam Hills, Myanmar. Thank you. Let me read what he had to say. These are his words. End racism, build peace. Let's walk to deathless state or peacefully. Respected representatives here today, I'm very honored and privileged to be here with you today and deliver a Dharma speech, particularly on this important milestone of the United Nations. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you and to the Buddhist Council in New York who invited me as friends. I am Dr. Venerable Sobhita, a Buddhist monk from Myanmar, the United Nations World Peace Ambassador. I'm visiting to come to New York City to attend in person the high-level meeting of the 77th session of the General Assembly to mark the commemoration of the 30th anniversary of the adaptation of the Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities, to be held on Wednesday, the 21st of September. As soon as I arrived on behalf of Myanmar, I prayed for world peace at the UN Church Center, and I joined Bioeconomic Superpower Conference in Scandinavia House on the 16th. He said a few words here. Let me read them. Let me contribute about the deathless state or build peace, according to the Tripitaka. As beautiful as the celestial kingdom is the homeland of the United States of America, beautifully and pleasantly enjoy worldly pleasures with the 10 passionate sounds. Be alive with heavenly crowd, everyone loves it. Tasty food and drink with splendid services everywhere. Warmly and friendly build the perfect cities, and prosperity creates opportunities for all walks of life. As the prayers answered, all will be winners. With all kinds of treasures and people, all beliefs or worships are mixed well. Flowers of peace and loving kindness, they blossom as in the celestial garden, beautiful and peaceful. The place for immortals. Of course, it can be found here in the United Nations and in America. Thus, I have studied the city of Amaravati, literally the place for immortals, was as beautiful and peaceful as the celestial kingdom in the Pali canons, depicted in biographical accounts of Gautama Buddha and the 24 Buddhas. And he was said here, I'm just going to put the things, I'm skipping. 4 immeasurables, 100,000 eons before the present Kappa, there was plenty of food in kingdoms where the hermits lived and resided. Moreover, the king and his administrators had been able to provide food for the people of their country. Consequently, people who possessed the southern mentality always used to warmly invite the visitors from all directions to provide or donate food for eat and drink. Likewise, the government of the Western states and its people also provided support to the international vulnerable refugees. The Big Apple City, New York, is full of urban features like the kingdom that I mentioned before. It is a perfect, great city in that sense. It is home of the UN headquarters at the international level. For this reason, it should alone as well be honored. The New York City amazingly possesses the magnificent urban features such as the global connections with international airlines and shipping lines. Furthermore, its citizens who love good merit and actions are really the hardworking people. As for me, I found the truth that the United States is a country which keeps the nationwide developments that are indistinguishable from the teachings of the Lord Buddha. I would like to bring a kind of attention from what's happening in my native country, Myanmar, which has recently experienced COVID-19 and political uprisings leading to a crisis in the near future due to global shocks. The country has been peacefully living together for 135 ethnic nationalists, as well as between four major religions, between Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. Although the Buddhist population accounts for nearly 90%, we tend to respect and celebrate all religions. I think Myanmar is the only country in the world which designated official holidays for four religions. However, the social fabric that bonds Myanmar society has been severely torn for the last 18 months of confrontation between political activities and military forces. In our history, Buddhist monks always stood for peace, justice, and democracy since its first involvement in anti-colonial movements against the British rule in the 20th century. Under previous military government, in August 2007, the Saffron Revolution led by Buddhist monks at the peak of authoritarian repression gave an undeniable fact about the role of Buddhist monks in support of human rights and democracy. And then I'm going to say he had one poem here, and I'm going to read that poem, and that's what he ended with. Let's walk on the flower path leads to a joyful end. This is the poem. The flower path is to be walked on it. Now is the time to walk on the flower path leads to a joyful end, passing through thorny ways to resist fame or dishonor, praise or blame, happiness or suffering for decades for the challenge of roughing in tough life or a poor countryman. The flower path is to be walked on it. Now is the time to walk on the flower path that leads to joyful end, to repay a loan from tough life. Our lives are invested, bitter wave and wilder world, crooked witchcraft to pass with humble minds, day after day, so many days in the tough life of a poor countryman. The flower path is to be walked on it. Invested my innumerable patience to make a footpath 1,000 people pass, laid the back of my body as a bridge to step, pour the water of loving kindness to release, sacrifice my days, months, and errors, put my weep and cry to sleep in my mind. The seal of pain kept quiet in my heart. Millions of my tears in the tough life of a poor countryman. To find the truth, taken the tulip as my companion. May the flower path be the witness. The source takes a long time to go through the cycles of rebirth. To stop repeated samsara, start looking for a path, countless tomorrow, a poor countryman onward. In the face of violence, we shall praise peace. In the sea of hatred, we shall heal with love. In the days of darkness, we shall stay the course. Thankfully for your attention. Venerable Sobhita. Thank you very much. Those were his words for us and the UN, and we're thankful for them. Next, we have closing prayers by Venerable Bhante Kondanna, as a Sri Lankan Buddhist monk. He received his novice ordination in 1968, his monastic training in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and a BA in Buddhist philosophy from the University of Kalaniya, also in Sri Lanka. In 1985, he came to the USA to participate and also provide his helpful skills and services at the New York Buddhist Vihara. During that time, the dignified Kondanna began to attend classes at CUNY and now holds a BS in social work. Moreover, in 1997, he obtained a Master's of Social Work from Fordham University in New York. He hopes that his contributions, experiences, and philosophy enrich and enhance the lives of everyone here in New York City and everywhere he wishes to bring his proficiency. Bhante Kondanna. Thank you so much. Please guide us.
Thank you for everybody. Dear venerable teachers in different traditions of Buddhist traditions, as well as interfaith teachers and friends who gather here. It's really beautiful and wonderful to see all of you together, all of us together, and providing this teaching, sharing the teachings each tradition has, and guiding through the meditation today. And as I would do my reciting as a prayer at the end. And it's nice to see that your topic, End Racism and Build Peace. I think Chimyo mentioned that she gets confused when we see that. Definitely it is, because racism, to end racism, when would be possible? It's a question. So we individually have to work on it to build peace, which is inside us, not outside. So we, by practicing dharma that we all sharing with each other, that could be the only way to do this. Learning and practicing, we may be able to end it, but it takes time, we know that. It reminds me of the Buddha as a bodhisattva. He left his home as a truth seeker. To find, he knew that living in the palace, even though he had everything, what he could think of, but he was not happy. There's something bothering him. There's something beyond this he always felt. Having that feeling, he left his home. According to his own teachings, while his parents, relatives, friends are crying, he put on a robe and he shaved his beard and hair and beard, and then he left his home, searching for it. And he went through, during the 6-year time period, he went through so much of painful activities, thinking that he can find the peace which is missing by going through the pain or going through the suffering. Through the suffering, he thought of finding the peace. But finally, he gave up both extremes. He saw it as extremes. And he thought, he first teachers that he met was Alara and Uddaka. Looking at them, he decided. He learned from them very quickly, became expertise on what they were teaching. And then he thought, not only Kalama or the Alara Kalama who has faith, energy and mindfulness, immersion and wisdom, I too have these things. Why don't I make an effort to realize? So he looked at himself. Not only that, teacher, I also have them. So I must qualify myself. I must practice. I must find this peace within. So when we see these statues that we all have in our centers, this reminds us these either 10 perfections or six perfections we in different traditions teach us. And that statue reminds us these virtues, these qualities, that what we all should have. And we, not for the Buddha to become Buddha, those virtues, but for us, whatever we are practicing, we can achieve our goals by using those concepts. Sila, or the morality, generosity, patience, compassion, truthfulness, perseverance, loving kindness and equanimity. These perfections we can practice. If we set our minds, we definitely can develop these qualities within us and find peace which is inside us and end this racism. I believe this is what all of us were making effort to share, and including the meditation as a Meditate NYC. So I was so happy that you share the meditation, guiding us through the meditation and sharing that whoever willing to practice, we all can practice it. And now I like to end this with reciting Metta Sutta, which is we all needed to have this to build up our patience and compassion. We definitely start with Metta or loving kindness. So it may be moving into Karuna, compassion, and it may be guiding the path to move us on to the altruistic joy and with equanimity. So that may be the peace that we are looking for. So let me chant it. I think I would chant in maybe not chant, but recite the English version of it, which I believe most of you are familiar with. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds. Whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak and strong, long or large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth. May all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm to another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings, one should cultivate boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hatred or resentment. Whether standing, walking, or sitting, lying down, or whenever awake, one should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here. Not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desire for sensual pleasures, one comes never again to unending birth cycle. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear-stricken be free from fear. May the grief be free from grief. May all beings be free of this. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkhantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sada sutti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkhantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada sutti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkhantu sabba devata sabba sanghanubhavena sada sutti bhavantu te. May there be for us all blessings. May all the devas protect us. May all the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, may we always enjoy well-being, peace, and happiness. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhante Kondanna. With that, we're ending the Meditate NYC 2022. I want to thank all of our speakers, Reverend Atkinson, Venerable Yuan, Lama Zangmo, Bhikkhu Santi, and of course, Bhante Kondanna, and also Dr. Venerable Sobhita for his words today. You know, I would just wanted to leave us with that. I always say this a lot of meetings, but I say the universe is, we're not here by accident. We're here on purpose. The universe is ordained that we represent the Buddha. And then in a lot of ways, he has no other hands than, oh, I did not know. I want to recognize also, it's early in the morning in Japan. Venerable T.K. Nakagaki has come on. So I'm very thankful that he's here. You know, he did a lot of things behind the scenes, even while he was in Japan, coming on many preparation meetings for this meeting. And so I wanted to thank him again, because I thanked the group in the beginning, but I wanted to let him know, as well as Bhante Kondanna. You didn't hear me say thank you, but I wanted to say thank you to both of you because it came on later on. But I was saying that, nothing happens by accident. We're here on purpose. And this is the time for us to act together. And that the Buddha, in a lot of ways, has no other hands than our hands, no other feet than our feet, and no other tongue than our tongue. And the question is, going forward, how are we going to use it? And I know we're going to use it wisely. Thank you so much, everybody. Please be well and be safe. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful afternoon.